Right. Okay. Right. So we're live on Facebook. So let's start now. Yeah, right. Thanks very much for coming. So hopefully it's going to be on Facebook, but we'll be able to download it later. I cut and paste some stuff from an earlier one, which sort of disappeared into the internet, but hopefully some of us will say something dynamic and interesting that we can drive people to the polls tomorrow.
Not tomorrow.
Thursday, yeah.
But if you go to Labour, you can go tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that I can hear people. So I can do a tiny bit of camera work. So you're on, Gwen.
Okay. Well, welcome and thank you all for coming this evening. My name is Gwen Nneji and I'll be chairing the Hustings tonight. Here's some brief information about me. I teach biology at a sixth form college in Tottenham, and I also teach on a part-time certificate programme at Birkbeck. And I'm a church warden at St Paul's. For me, it's a privilege to be asked to chair the Hustings event, because I think we're very fortunate in the UK being able to live in a democratic society where we can express our views and hear the views of others as well. And we should take every opportunity to make events like this happen if we can. So at this point, I'd like to thank Andy for taking the initiative and organising the Hustings.
Well, it's a collective decision at the last.
Oh, right. Okay, with the candidates.
We met together and we agreed to
have the Hustings. Yeah. Well, thank you all for doing that, because I think it is important. Yeah. It gives us a better idea. We can go to the polls more informed when we're making our choices. So my job is, as chair this evening, is to introduce the speakers and give them the opportunity to make their presentations. And then each speaker will have the same time so that it's fair, and then give the audience the opportunity to ask questions. So to keep order, I ask that we have just one rule, and that is only one person speaking at a time, and that we listen respectfully to each other. I'll present the speakers in alphabetical order by last name. So the candidate order will be Mohammed Asif, Fraser Coppin, Andy Walker, and then Alex Wilson. Once I've introduced each speaker by name and party, they can represent, they will be able to make their presentation. They'll have 2 minutes to speak. I will time this on my phone and it will bleep when the 2 minutes have expired. And then I will stop the speaker when the time is up. Then I will invite questions from the audience. Audience questions will last 10 minutes, and I'll time that as well. And audience, your questions, you may want to address something specific that the speaker has said, or you may want to address one of the issues relating to housing, poverty, crime and policing, or climate change. So we'll continue with that pattern until all the speakers have had a turn, and if there's any time left over or it's left afterwards, we can have a more open general discussion. Okay. And I guess you all know that this is being streamed on social media, just so that you're aware. That was quite a long introduction. We should begin. And so I'll start by introducing our first speaker, Mohammed Asif, representing Independent Party.
So not a party, standing as an independent. I actually, given the tragic circumstances that have happened today, I'm probably going to forego my sort of 2 minutes political side of things and just offer my sincere condolences to the family, which a 13-year-old that's been killed over in Hainault. It was tragic news. I'm a parent myself, and I can't imagine the heartache that the family must be going through. The child went to school and ended up as an innocent bystander actually getting murdered. So I just wanted to take a moment's silence there and pay my respects to the family, and also to the services that turned up to help. I know 2 officers have also been injured as well, and my thoughts go out to them, make sure that everybody who's been injured by this incident actually does recover and is safe. So I think I'm just going to leave it there rather than go into the political side. I'm sure we'll have questions and it will impact on some of the things that we're all standing for in terms of safety of residents, etc. So we'll deal with it there. Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I was just going to leave the rest of the time as a moment of silence for the deceased.
Thank you.
Gwen, if you don't mind, how about giving Mohammed a bit extra so he can say what he wants?
Absolutely.
That's very kind of you. Really, in terms of introductions for myself, I'm a long-standing resident of Redbridge. I've been a volunteer here in various organisations. I work over at Gardens of Peace for the last 4 or 5 years, helping out in that community project. I work across other charities in the borough, so the Salvation Army, helping with the homeless, both in terms of food and liaising between some of the Muslim mosques in the area and making sure that they're raising funds across the community, as well as shelter. So those are some of the issues. I do a lot of advocacy work for individuals who perhaps can't voice their concerns or deal with local government too much red tape. So sort of filling in forms, dealing with housing, special educational needs. I have a background in education as an ex-head teacher, so I'm always willing to go out and help those that perhaps need some extra support. So those are my main areas of background. I have been involved in local politics in terms of just local councils, etc., canvassing, stood as a councillor once before, and this time around very much wanting to stand as the next stage of helping the community raise their voices and key issues and be represented at the GLA. I'm standing as an independent, and the reason for that is that I think it's time that we really did have a change rather than voting for the same political parties and getting the same outcomes. It's time that we actually made a difference and had somebody who truly represented the residents of Havering and Redbridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Can I take questions from the audience? Anybody want to ask Mohammed a question? Sorry, I thought you were indicating.
Yeah, actually, yes. I was going to say, I take it you would believe in greater consultation of residents about housing schemes and also about addressing environmental concerns too.
Absolutely. I already work with a number of residents, particularly along this main corridor that we have from Ilford Hill going all the way up towards Chadwell Heath, where we've got a real number of housing going up in terms of high-rise and tower blocks and flats, and residents have been very concerned about the number of developments that are taking place, but without perhaps the greenery, the open spaces, the environment where people could grow and have families. And these are real issues and concerns that we just don't believe are being addressed. There seems to be a race almost in terms of numbers, thousands, rather than the quality that's needed in terms of future planning for London. And it's not just within these boroughs, it's actually neighbouring boroughs as well. And what that, I think, is leading is to future problems, whether that's crime, whether that's very poor transport, whether that's just poor environment for people to live in and grow up in. These are, I think, real issues that need to be taken forward. So absolutely,
I agree.
Thank you. There's a question over there.
Apologies that I was running late. I missed your introduction. However, I'd be grateful if you could advise us as to what you are going to do for the residents of Wanstead. In particular, there are 3 key issues. The first one is in relation to the W12 bus, the rerouting of the W12 bus, that no one seems to be doing anything and is going to disadvantage vulnerable groups, the seniors and school children in being able to access, and the principles of getting people out of their cars is absolutely contrary to what they're proposing to do with rerouting the W12 bus. That's the first big issue. The second one is the residents of Wanstead have been, and also all over Redbridge, to be perfectly honest, with the closure, the unilateral closure of Wanstead Youth Centre, and we have asked the council to reopen it or give us reasons why they have unilaterally closed it on the 15th of October. And the third issue is the building of flats.
Okay, so should we
just
take
finish
one at
the-
a time?
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
So do with the first one.
So the bus route, fully on board with you and your concerns around that, because actually that detracts from the whole point of people not using cars and congestion. Absolutely horrified that it's proposed to take that bus route out. Already working with residents who set up a petition already and get groundful support to say that they should turn that decision around. So obviously as a GLA member, I'll be working and holding the mayor to account as to why under the transport policy that's happening, because it's clearly detrimental. As you pointed out, there are so many people who rely on that bus route. Not everybody has cars anyway, and it does serve the route to Whipps Cross Hospital, so that's a further concern. So I will continue to do that. I said, irrespective of the campaigning, I'm already working with the local residents in terms of that petition and working at the grassroots level. I think Andy is as well. We're both in one of the groups where that's happening. So we are picking up these issues at the local level.
So the second one.
I'm surprised you're saying there is a group set up, because I've been trying to find out who the person is who drafted the petition. What's her name? Marks Moran or something like that. However, I'd love to talk to you after this discussion.
More than happy to share those details with you. I can give you the details. There's even a WhatsApp group where we've been discussing it, so happy to share those with you
Thank
afterwards.
you. Yeah.
And your second question was on the youth centre?
Youth Centre, yes.
So the youth centre, that's a local council decision, and again, with regards holding the council account, although I can't do that directly, one of the roles of the GLA members is to work with councils and also liaise with the mayor themselves in terms of making sure that there's some consistency and joined up. So it's not just that there's youth centre closings, the impact this has on the youth. There's very few places across the boroughs where youth can actually go, and we've already seen tragic circumstance examples of knife crime and other things, and partly due to the fact that youth have nowhere to go. There's no meaningful engagement, so it's raising these issues directly with the council leaders and councillors and saying, look, what provision are you then putting in place? If you're closing things down, if you're cutting services, then where are you actually making that provision elsewhere? What's the future plan? It just seems to be too short-sighted. Everything is about today rather than what's going to happen in the future when these kids grow up and more youngsters come through. And they're don't seem to be looking at that. So I will definitely give you, a pledge and assurance. I will continue to do that, both at the local level, living here in Redbridge myself, as well as, if I'm inshallah successful at the GLA, to do that from outside, from the GLA point of view as well.
But very importantly, as far as the GLA is concerned, it's across London
Exactly.
that we need youth centres, and Wanstead Youth Centre was one of its unique centre with absolutely wonderful sporting facilities. And you heard about the stabbings at Hainault today. It's absolutely ridiculous that across the board, the community don't have anywhere to go to engage and play sport.
So this might touch on your third point, which I think you were going to raise about housing.
Yeah.
And one of the points about the housing I touched on at the beginning was that there's just far too much development going on where it's about numbers rather than the quality of housing, and then planning for the future when those families or individuals have families and they grow up, where is the room to grow and where is the environment in which these communities can actually grow and thrive. It just seems to be a very short-term plan on having temporary people coming and going, transient people living in rented accommodation, rather than sustainable communities that can be thriving for the future. The other aspect of this, which is very specific, is that we pay the mayor a contribution from what they call the Community Infrastructure Levy. Now, I want to know, I think we are one of the biggest contributors given the amount of development that's going on, certainly through this corridor and through the boroughs. How much of that is coming back in the form of investment for youth clubs? So I think these things are all linked, whether it's housing, whether it's crime, whether it's additional money for policing. Money's taken, but very little seems to be coming back in terms of future investment into our boroughs. So that's where I will be focusing.
And thank you for touching on that point. However, the main issue about the building of flats on one side of the high street, one, it's a conservation area. Two, the infrastructure will not support the multi-flat scenario that they're proposing. And as it is, the high street is already, the traffic situation is absolutely horrendous. So, and they've already planning to build flats, pocket living or something like that, in Snaresbrook Car Park. And if they're going to build on the high street, it beggars belief that they've been granted planning permission.
This is the point I was picking up on, that it seems to be driven by pure numbers. So the mayor is driving some of this housing as part of the London-wide development, but purely in terms of quantity, not quality. So there's no qualitative provision of this housing. It's local authorities, you must build X number of homes. And then it's left to the local authority, which seems to be a race to the bottom, frankly, of how high a tower block can we get. And that's driven by profit. The developers want to make the most number of flats they possibly can to make the most amount of profit. That's of no benefit to our community. That's no benefit to the local people that live there, who have a quality of life there that is going to be impacted negatively. So this is what I was saying earlier, that this is one of my main areas where I'm pledging and saying that I will be holding the mayor to account about reflecting this in their policy, that we need to have more qualitative measures about a community-based development programme across London, where we build communities and grow communities, not just have numbers of housing that goes up, and as you said, there's no infrastructure, there's no actual transport links that are sufficient, or GPs or NHS services.
Right. Okay, so that's our first round.
Can I just make a request? It might be fantastic. I've been covering this area. Would it be possible to have the presentations first? Because it's a bit unfair that you're targeting one person for the question.
We're moving to our second presentation.
No, I know.
We're going to.
If you have the presentation, then we can find a question, and they can all reply with their different versions, rather than having one response and maybe different questions to the next person. I appreciate that. Yeah, but we compare the answers.
I actually agree. I completely agree.
Okay. Instead of taking one at a time, we'll have the next two presentations. So, the next three presentations. Sorry, Andy. So, Fraser?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. This is my second Hustings now. Thanks to everyone organising it, including Andy, who is very modestly, even though he organised this, is not really sitting on the panel. I mean, if you're missing a trick there, I'd be up here if I were you. But that's fine. My name's Fraser, and I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for this constituency. I'm a relatively new Londoner. I've only been here for a few years, and I've been overwhelmed with how warmly I've been welcomed into these communities. I think there's no other city in the world quite like London that attracts people from all over the world and has them living together. I think it's a great thing, and it would be an honour to represent part of it in the Assembly. However, despite all of the positive things about London, we're currently suffering at the moment from a lack of leadership from City Hall. We've got the Conservatives who, judging by the campaign that they've run, don't really seem to care at all, or are barely trying, it seems. And then we've got Sadiq Khan, who, be it on housing, on net zero, and many other issues, has missed target after target that he's set. And about the only thing that he can really offer is getting expensive gimmicks out during election time in order to try and drum up some votes. And I think there's a huge appetite out in our communities, and I've noticed that going out in Ilford and Wanstead and other places, speaking to people, there's a huge appetite for an alternative, and I think the Liberal Democrats can offer that at this election. We've had a fantastic mayoral candidate in Rob Blackie. We've got a great team on the list for the Assembly as well. And across London, we're standing to fix the Met Police, to build more affordable homes, tackle the climate emergency, and I'm looking forward to telling you a lot more about our platform over this stuff. So, yeah, thanks.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much, Fraser. Andy?
Right, well, thank you very much for coming, everybody. There's food and drink at the back if you want to have something to refresh yourselves with. You might be thinking, what? Sorry?
Right.
Oh dear. Well, rewind that. You can't have any. Why TUSC? What is TUSC? Well, TUSC stands for Trade Union Socialist Coalition. We think Labour's giving too much ground to big business. And the London plan is an example of that. High rise going up across town, bad for the people living in them, bad for the local communities nearby. A lot of them are single aspect flats. That means they've got one wall and windows off that wall. Bad for ventilation, bad for overheating. They're linked to poor health. A group of us, to show hopefully that the TUSC difference will make, I'm in favour of political parties commissioning, or trade unions commissioning research. A group of us, plenty of people in this room, we went to 10 Downing Street about the increase in child deaths, and we said, I don't know if you picked up on this, but an increase in child deaths, which is a disgrace. Obviously it's a disgrace. So we went to 10 Downing Street and said, you should be doing some more work on this, some more research. Came back, don't want to know, not interested. But there's nothing to stop ordinary people saying we want, is it linked to benefit cuts? Is it linked to living in high-rise, single aspect flats because they're unhealthy? Is it linked because they're living in care and the care, whatever the reasons are, we need to know. So that's, I'd like to think, one of the TUSC differences. The key thing is we say the trade union laws that were changed back in post-79, in the past, younger people might, maybe
So
another time,
that's
I'll
time.
go to that.
You will have an opportunity to
Yes,
say more
yes, yes.
as the audience asks questions. So now we move to Alex. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. And thank you, residents, for coming along this evening to listen to what some of your candidates have got to say and why we're asking for your votes on Thursday. My name's Alex Wilson. I'm standing as the Reform UK candidate. You might not have heard of Reform UK. We're a fairly new party where we did contest the last London elections. And we are the only party, other than those that are already represented on the Assembly, that have a full slate of candidates across all constituencies. But like many residents in Redbridge, I wasn't born here, but I moved here about 15 years ago. I made it my home, and I'm absolutely delighted with how welcoming the community has been over that time. It's a wonderful community, and despite our myriad cultural and religious differences across the borough, we generally get on, and that's a really, really good thing. I did spend 5 years when I was with the Conservatives as a Redbridge councillor, and so now I'm looking with a different party, but for another chance to serve the community that I love. So why am I standing for reform? As an ex-Conservative, I feel that the two main parties have let us down for too long. Nationally, we have the highest tax burden since the war. Locally, here in Redbridge, Labour have increased their share of the council tax by 48% since 2014, and London-wide, Sadiq Khan has increased his share by 71% since 2016. Yet we're paying more and more and more, and we're getting less and less and less in return. Nothing seems to work anymore. Economic growth is sluggish at best. We have record NHS waiting lists, soaring violent crime. Housing is increasingly unaffordable. And I mean, over in the west of the borough where I live, you have the Broadmead Bridge road closure, which is a classic example of failure of local, London and national government to kind of just get their heads together, work it out and fix it. So I'm standing for something different. Reform wants to end the war on London's drivers, so we'll scrap all of ULEZ, not just the extension, scrap low traffic neighbourhoods and unnecessary bus lanes like that along Woodford Avenue, and wants to tackle London's rising crime. So whereas a lot of police stations obviously closed over the last few years, we want to open up more local police access points in busy consumer locations, part funded by partnership with things like 24-hour supermarkets and so on and so forth. Want to speed up the delivery of affordable housing, particularly on TfL and GLA owned land as the largest owner of land in the capital. So my time's up now.
Okay, yes, your
Lots more to
time's
say,
up.
which I'm sure we'll come on to in due course.
2 minutes goes very quickly. So can I invite the audience again to address questions to the panel? And I guess if the question is asked, then each member of the panel can have an opportunity to answer the question. We have a question over there.
So I'm a lifelong Redbridge resident. I have grown up by the M25 my whole life and got diagnosed with asthma last year, which has been really not fun development for me. So I was wondering what you would do as our representative of the GLA to address air pollution in the city.
So who would like to start with that? Andy? Okay.
I've put in, I've been battling for air pollution figures for child deaths and hospital attendances at King George and Queen's for years. It's part of the Stop the Testo Toxic Towers campaign, and there's plenty of people here in this room who are members of the campaign too. The problem with the stats that the Mayor uses is they're modelled stats. It's not real deaths, not real hospital admissions. So everyone is aware that there's one child death linked to air pollution, but my belief is there's a lot more. So initially knocked back for using the wrong regulations. Apparently you need environmental regulations based upon the Our House Convention. There isn't time to go into that. So that's at BHRUT. I'll be raising the issue on Thursday. So we're looking for dates of death, postcodes, and then you can link it in with high pollution days. So if we can get the information, it will tie in with ULEZ. Now, they're not going to give such sensitive information to individuals, so the request is that it goes to an academic. At one time, I've read that the NHS would give reasonable information out to academics, but that seems to be moving away from that. So there may be a struggle to get hold of the information. But if we can get hold of the information, it will answer the question about what needs to be done, because we'll find out if ULEZ is working, if it's not working. If it is working, it makes an argument for we need more restrictions on polluting vehicles, and we need better air quality filters for flats close to main roads.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
So, not a new question, something certainly that I've spoken on before. So I don't think there's anybody that I've met that doesn't agree with having better air quality. Absolutely, everybody wants that. I think the issue is the way that we're implementing that. That seems to be the main area of concern. Firstly, in terms of data, we were given a case as to why ULEZ was necessary because of the poor air quality. But since then, we've not had any real data following that to say what's the impact of ULEZ thus far. And looking at the complete impact of ULEZ, not just in terms of individuals, in terms of number of deaths, etc., children or otherwise, but also in terms of impact on the whole of London as a result of it. Because you have to do these things in the context of real life and living. People don't just have good air quality here and then are starving to death over here because there's not enough food to eat. These things are holistic. So you have to look at the cost of living and say, at a time where it's so difficult already for families to make ends meet, we were asking them to say, well, you can't get around any longer because your car now has to pay so much per day, otherwise, you're going to get fined. That just doesn't seem to work. So I think we need more data which demonstrates why this is a positive thing, certainly in terms of its expansion, but also to look at the timing of this and the grants that are being made available and make sure that we extend those, certainly for businesses and those individuals that are actually suffering as a result of it. And it's not draconian in the sense of you must do this as a deadline, but actually by case basis, so we encourage more people. I could go on because actually there's a lot more detail required there around having better transport. If we're taking buses away, on one hand, then how are people supposed to get around? How is London supposed to move? How are businesses supposed to? So actually these things need to be joined up. There needs to be more consistency between these things, not just simply focus on it as a single issue. It's not. It's tied into the rest of it.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your question. I'm guessing my kind of initial starting point would be one that's not wholly favourable to your view, and I recognise that. But as Mohammed has said, I think we need to look at all these things in the round. And I think when the extension was proposed and being worked on, then even TfL's figures were suggesting that in outer London, it wouldn't actually make a noticeable difference to air quality. So the thinking behind it clearly doesn't match up with what it's expected to have. And we'll see when more data comes forward, and perhaps we'll see if there is an impact. But at the outset, it wasn't expected to have a noticeable impact on air quality in outer London. Inner London, perhaps it's a different ballgame altogether, and things have progressed there. But I think ultimately we need to be thinking more about carrots than sticks. And we'd like to see, I mean, more people are driving electric vehicles, that's part of the transition, perhaps, but also things like cleaner fuels, synthetic fuels, ultimately hydrogen, those are going to be a much bigger and better and more long-term solution to cleaner. We all want cleaner air, as Howard said. It's a question of how we get there. And I don't think that taxing ordinary people just to drive off your forecourt, off your driveway and head into town to go to work, go to shopping, whatever. I don't think taxing people £12.50 a day is a fair way of doing that. The impact on businesses, on charities, and on ordinary residents is too expensive. And especially at the time when we have a cost of living crisis, we have higher tax, we have higher inflation. To add further costs, particularly when TfL's own figures don't back up the supposed rationale for doing it, it just doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Alex. Fraser.
Okay, so thanks for the question. It's sort of quite poignant for me as well, because my mum has asthma, and pretty severe asthma as well. And I'm genuinely a little bit worried every time she comes to visit me in London because of the air quality. It's something that's really noticeable and is a huge problem. And we know that these things are directly linked to health problems. There's a ton of evidence for this. ULEZ, I think on paper was a good idea. I think the intention was good. It's not been implemented perfectly, and I think it's not been communicated super well. I lost count of the amount of people I've talked to that seem to think they're going to have to pay the charge when they don't, my mum being one of those. And I am a bit concerned about the burden of the cost upon particularly the most poorest in the area. So I'd like to see the scrappage scheme extended, as the Dems have been calling for in the Assembly, which will help. But overall, something quite seismic to improve air quality, I think is a good idea in principle, and I would welcome that. I would welcome more investment in cycling as well. And the other side of this is that we need to get people out of cars, primarily. So cycling is a part of that. Another thing is transport, including the tube and buses. We've had buses mentioned already. A shocking cutting of bus routes and moving of bus routes all over, particularly in outer London when people rely on them. I think we need to sort that out. And I also think, please, can somebody fix the central line, because I commute regularly on it and it's driving me absolutely insane. And ultimately, if we want to do something about air quality, we need to make sure that these public transports, these greener alternatives, work properly, and right now they don't. And Lib Dems are going to make that a huge priority in this election.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to hear, what the candidates are saying. A lot of people in the past have promised a lot of things, particularly people like Steve Carr. And I'm wondering why you think you can actually deliver where other people have promised and not delivered. I am really, really, really disappointed in Sadiq Khan. And I want to get out of my car and be using cleaner, greener alternatives. I don't think the way ULEZ, even though my car combines, didn't cost me any extra, but I think it caused a huge amount of damage to an awful lot of people. And the W12 bus, my wife has very limited mobility. She needs the W12 bus. I would far rather be on the bus where it's practicable than using my car. But we need the improvements in public transport, yes, central line, and and bus routes and things like that. Just putting in low traffic neighbourhoods and taxing the motorists to death, it's not the way to go. I mean, it was just a big lie. It's done, as far as I can see, not all to improve air quality, but it's harmed a lot of people. You know, I think it's dreadful, but that's just personal opinion.
I think you asked.
So, you know, why do you think you can deliver when other people are failing?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I think I
Starts on the page.
set aside from others on the basis that I am standing as an independent. Not been done before. We've already had 2 terms of a Conservative representative, Keith Prince. We're all sitting here talking about all the things that are not right. Our experience has been what? Not good. So I'm standing as independent because I believe in grassroots representation. I'm coming as a resident who's lived here, worked here, you know, talked to residents both here in Havering who are telling me these are the issues, including, we touched right at the beginning, crime. That's one of the key issues that people have talked about, and not feeling safe. And unfortunately, we've had tragic news today. It just highlights the fact that what residents are saying is not resonating, it's not going through. So my pledge in terms of what difference can I make is, this is full time for me. I'm not trying to have a career in a party, I'm not trying to go up the greasy pole at all. Purely doing this to represent residents, those that are really suffering from the house building that's currently going on, or the flats and the endless tenancies in and out, and the poor environment, those that are suffering from the poor transport, those that are suffering because of extra cost placed upon them. All these things, they feel that their voices are not being heard where it counts when these policies are being discussed and made. So my pledge is, as the independent, I'm here to represent you as the residents of this borough, so I can do this full-time job for you. Thank you.
Andy?
The reason I won't be able to deliver, I'll tell you how things change though. When I've been part of a team, things do change. I was involved with the Stop the King George, Keep Open King George A&E, and people said to me, well, you ain't going to do anything. Well, of course I wasn't. But a group of us, some of us in this room, we got together and we stopped it. And data was key. Every month, if you look at my blog, the Stop King George Hospital blog, I'd dig out the stats and I would be saying, oh, how can you be serious? Look at these hospitals, they can't cope now. What are you doing? And I like to think it was good decisions need to be driven by the data. And that's why we kept open King George A&E. It wasn't sentiment. Tesco's, stopping Tesco's. I've been part of a campaign. If it was just me, wouldn't have even bothered getting out the door. Because there was a team of us, we've stopped it for 4 years, and if we can continue and build that team, we will stop it. Well, I don't know if we will definitely stop it, but we can give it our best shot. It was something like 18 child deaths the year it happened, and it dropped off the cliff. 2 immediately in the year after. Same with hospital admissions, hundreds before, hundreds less after. Now, but we don't know for sure whether that's purely air quality, because there's a lot less traffic on the roads in the year after, or it might be other issues. You don't know for sure. Hence, really pushing for the data to go to an academic and the dates of death. If you've got the dates of death and the postcodes, and they tie in with high pollution days, then you've got very strong evidence that air pollution is damaging a lot of young lives. And that would suggest, well, you've got the modern data as well, but Sadiq Khan's not doing that. To my mind, if you're reporting to your residents, you should be reporting on all sorts of data, crime, the health emergency, everything that the government scrutinises or provides. So, yes, I won't be able to do it, but I'm confident that with my track record, I can work with others to get stuff done.
Can I just make one quick one?
Yes, and then I'll invite the other 2 speakers.
With regard to air pollution, simply stopping wood-burning stoves would be the quickest, the simplest, the best bang for the bucks. But I think Sadiq Khan didn't do it because he couldn't tax anybody and he couldn't raise the revenue. But the thing that would really make a difference, stop wood burning stoves.
Thank you very much for that. Fraser or Alex, who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. Thanks. I mean, I sort of agree with some of the sentiment of what you said with Sadiq Khan. I mean, it's certainly been very underwhelming during his tenure. I mentioned at the beginning, he set himself a target for net zero by 2030. We're going to be 8 years short of that. He set numerous targets on building homes and affordable homes. We're building nowhere near enough. I mean, every time this guy sets a target, he seems allergic to meeting them. And I kind of get it. I kind of get why people are feeling that way. I mean, what I would say on a personal level, I work for a charity in inner London, delivering grants to kids from low-income backgrounds and to fund education. So I am able to deliver every time I go into work. And the Liberal Democrats, we already have a strong team on the London Assembly. If we do okay in these elections, they're going to stay there and maybe grow, I hope. And we control councils, particularly in southwest London already, and we do deliver for those areas. We deliver affordable homes, environmental measures, anything you can think of. And as your candidate for Havering and Redbridge, I would do the same. And I'll just sort of say a final thing on the kind of disillusionment point. It's understandable given Sadiq Khan's performance and this current Tory government's performance. So I think what we could do to get people more engaged, reverse this ridiculous decision where the mayor is now on first past the post, go back to a more proportional system, and campaign for more proportional elections across the city and indeed across the country. If you want your choice to actually matter at elections, if you want to get people involved, then that would be a great way to start.
Thank you. And Alex?
Thank you. So the question is about delivery and how can we be trusted as candidates to actually deliver on our promises and if we were to be elected. I think two things are fundamental to anyone's ability to deliver what they say, and that is experience and mindset. I think experience, I've been a councillor for 5 years. I spent part of that time as part of the cabinet, and it was when I was a Conservative. Now, I know Keith isn't here, so I shouldn't really be saying nice things about him, or nasty things, I won't. But when we were running that council, every budget we set in 5 years was a council tax freeze, and without having catastrophic impacts on local services. We didn't close one city centre, we didn't make cuts in libraries, and those are really important things. So it can be done if you have the right experience, and if you bring people on board who are used to running things like charities, like businesses, careers in the services. So you've got a breadth of experience with people who know how to get things done and are accountable for that in their professional lives as well as in their political lives. But also I think the other crucial thing is the mindset. Everyone who is responsible for spending taxpayers' money should be as careful with that taxpayers' money as they would be with their own. And that sadly isn't the case with far too many career politicians. It's a greasy pole, the climate, it's about their own sort of self-advancement, and it's not about making sure they do a good job for those people who put them there. And I think that is absolutely crucial. Ultimately, I would like all levels of government to do a bit less, but to focus on what they are doing and to do it better. And that means spending your money more wisely. And one of our key national policies is to say to every spending manager across the entirety of the public sector, and again, this might not make me popular with some people, but I'm not here to be popular, I'm here to say what I think is right. You need to save £5 in every 100 in your budget. And if you can't do that, then actually that budget saving will be your salary. Because we've got to get costs under control. We've had runaway inflation, we've had runaway taxation. We can't go on doing it the same way like this. We need to be more careful, more frugal, but ultimately focus on doing what government can do well, but do it better.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have another question?
Yeah, I have two questions, but I'll try to make it quick. I lived in Redbridge all my life. I lived in Channel Heath first, then I moved to Ilford in 2005. Over the years, I noticed that there's been lots of litter on the floor, flag tipping, graffiti. I understand that the local council raised the limit of the maximum fine, but I feel like they don't do enough to stop the flag tipping or catch the perpetrators. I've got a second question as well. there's a parcel of land between Alderborough Hatch and Havering, Hainault Forest, called a Fairlock Lane. It's been mostly fields and a little bit of land is used for agriculture, and a company is using it for aggregate as well, but it's mostly empty fields. I've been wondering, what are your plans to utilise the land? Are you going to keep as greenfield, or are you going to build homes? Because Redbridge, I'm not exactly against building homes, but I'm also against too many high-rise apartments that are only for wealthy people, and local people can't afford rent or to purchase it. So I was wondering if you build homes there, or use some of the land and return it to Havering, Hainault Forest, sorry, as well. Yeah, those are my 2 questions.
So fly tipping and homes, is it Alderborough Hatch?
It's a parcel of
It's
land
near-
between Alderborough Hatch and Hainault Forest.
And
It's
Hainault.
largely greenfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first question was about littering. I've noticed a lot.
Fly tipping and
Fly
littering.
tipping a lot.
Who would like to take that question, or those 2 questions? Fraser?
I'll go. Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. So firstly, litter, I'd say a couple of things. One is slightly more practical answer, one is just like a bit of a rant. I'll do the rant first. I'm getting really frustrated with the amount of litter. I mean, I spend quite a lot of time in the parks running and hanging around, and the amount of litter really does annoy me. It's almost like there's not much pride in the city or in the community. I mean, I remember, look, I'm pretty young, but I remember when I was a kid, I felt like there was a bit more pride in this. So I don't know whether that's easy to fix, but it is annoying. And then as a practical point, ultimately, I think what we need to do is deter people from doing it, and then actually make sure that these things are enforced. And currently we have a police service that across London that really doesn't work very well at all. We've had cuts to local police stations and local policing teams. So we need to be protecting those services. We need to make sure that crimes like fly tipping are actually investigated, and then something's actually done, because ultimately if nothing's going to be done, then people are just going to keep doing it. And then Fairlock Plain. So I, along with a few of my Lib Dem colleagues, actually went to meet a group of residents in that area a couple of months ago. I can't remember if they have a proper name, but it was a group of people who live on Billet Road, sort of around
I
there.
think it's called Alderborough Hatch Association.
Yes, so that sounds about right. And we met with them, and it was really interesting listening to what they were saying, because they were people that moved there from a more open part of the city, and they moved there for that reason, because of the green space and the farm, and it is quite a nice place. There is unfortunately quite a lot of litter around there. That's the only thing I would say, which isn't good. But it's a nice place around there, so I completely understand what they're saying. I think we should build more homes as a general rule. Maybe we'll come back to that. But clearly, in that area, in the Fairlock Plain, you've got something that's worth protecting there. So I'd like to see some of it used and some of it kept to maintain the area as well.
Yeah, just a quick interruption. My personal view is to return some of the land to nature, to Fairlock Park or to the Hainault Forest, and some of the land for house building, but affordable homes and for families as well, not just the expensive high-rises that wealthy people use and leave it empty as an investment.
Yeah, I basically agree. I'd like to see some homes on some of it, and then on some of it, we have a policy across London actually to turn kind of wasteland, particularly TfL-owned land, into sort of rewild these areas and to use some of it for allotments for the community as well. So maybe that's something that we could look at for part of that area. That'd be pretty nice.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on one question? Yeah. One of the things I found was with East London Waste Authority, we were last year, the tip down at Beckton was they said you can only, I'm not sure if it's changed, but last time I went about a year ago, they said you can only make one delivery, which again doesn't have fly tipping. If people want to tip dispose their, kitchen stuff or their bathroom, because now they're saying you can only dispose domestic stuff, not if you're doing some extension yourself or you're doing some work. So I just wonder if you can elaborate a little bit on that, whether that still falls in the remit of the mayor, because it's multi-borough, as I suppose, process of Barking, Newham, and also Redbridge, and I think Waltham Cross.
Yeah, I'll just briefly answer that, and then because I'm aware I'm waffling a lot, I'll let the others chime in. But just to briefly, with the tips, it's almost like they make these up as they go along, because I swear every time I go, there's something wrong. So I think as a general point, I'd like to see recycling be a bit simpler. I think we can get it too complicated. I think these facilities need to be more of them. They need to be more accessible. And yeah, hopefully that would help with the flag tipping issue as well.
Okay. So, Alex?
So, Elwood, I think, is a partnership with, is it 4 boroughs, so Havering, Redbridge, Barking, Dagenham and Waltham Forest. So that's a partnership with the local authorities rather than something that the GLA is particularly responsible for. But I actually show you called it a rant, it wasn't a rant, about littering and blighting. It's just an observation of kind of the state we're in at the moment. And I mean, I've been in this borough for 15 years, and even just in the last 5 years, that whole situation seems to have changed. It feels grubbier, it feels dirtier, and yeah, it's a real kind of quality of life issue that it sounds like it's quite a minor thing, but it's not. It really makes you feel less comfortable in your own community, and that shouldn't be the case at all. We need to try and encourage a sense of civic pride and people take care in the areas that they live in. And I think, yes, enforcement is part of that, and I think the council should be commended for the work that it does on that, but also should be doing more. But also sort of education and from a very early age, you need to be taught to take pride in your community, your environment, and the quality of life around you. So it wasn't a rant at all. It was a very fair observation and one that I completely share. As far as sort of house building is concerned, now I'm broadly very, very pro house building, and again, I'm probably not here to be popular, but we're here to say what I think is right. We do have a housing crisis in this country and in this city, and we can argue about the causes of that, but we do have a growing population, and we need to find ways of housing. And we need more of everything. We need more private rented, we need more social housing, and we need more market housing to buy. So if you accept that in order to get a grip on this housing crisis, we need some more housing, then it becomes, where and how and what do we build? And I think, on the one hand, we get criticised if building proposals come in for high density flats in town centres close to existing transport infrastructure. On the other hand, we get criticised if we try building on greenfields. And when I was councillor, when I was cabinet member for planning at the time, I don't know if Andy remembers, but I was sacked from the cabinet because I was trying to push for some limited greenbelt release so we could build some houses on a particular couple of sites there, which then take a bit of the pressure off elsewhere. So I think a balanced approach needs to be taken, as with so many things, but fundamentally we do need to build more houses, and we therefore need to find ways of doing that, or we need to find ways of doing that that can provide a range of type and tenure, and in particular making sure there are decent family homes. People can come and live here, grow up here and stay here, rather than just rabbit hutch flats that are very much associated with a much more transient population that doesn't take that. And that then feeds back into the taking pride in your community, because if you live here for a longer period of time, you feel you've got more stake in it, and hopefully then the overall quality will improve.
Okay, thank you. Asif?
Yeah, so let me deal with this directly. So I've lived here in Redbridge as well, and I've seen the changes. And I go back to the point that part of this is the changes in the demographics of the area. And it's a bit more than pride. It's actually the failure to build communities. When you have a community, when you know your neighbours, when you know the people up and down the street, you're not going to litter, because these are people that you know, and it's more than just the pride that you have in the area that you live in, but there is a sense of community. What we're lacking now is that sense of community. More and more people are transient and don't feel part of that community. They may be going to work, they may be coming home, going back to their flat, apartment, with one window that looks out and nothing but brick wall maybe, and therefore they don't feel part of that. So, and I think that links to your second part of your question quite rightly, which is, how are we going to do this? If we continue to just build more of the same, we are just creating more problems for ourselves and more of these issues. So I think the answer to the second question is, it's mixed development. A mixed development requires catering for all. Yes, some smaller houses or flats, as it were, and some family dwellings, and also mixed in with, and I don't believe in this idea of if we want green spaces, we have to go to a Hainault Park or another field somewhere else. Actually, it should be around you, and you should be interacting with nature where you live. That's part of what I believe a mixed development should have. And there are some really great examples across London, and there's some very poor examples where it's just concrete jungle after concrete jungle, and not even flower pots are being allowed outside. And I've had residents, really saying we can't even get funding to put a flower pot in somewhere where we were told the developers were going to put green. So those are my answers. There's a technical answer as well around enforcement. For those that really don't listen, I think we need greater use of that CCTV and more prosecution. If I park my car, I'll get a ticket. If I can't pump something, nothing happens. And that just seems ludicrous. So I think it is about using the technology to benefit communities, not penalise communities for the wrong things, but things like this where people are fly tipping, they should be prosecuted, and things like CCTV can be used effectively for that.
Come back to my point at the introduction. A politicised working class is absolutely vital. The working class in England was far more organised than in America, and you've got a national health service, you've got better housing for the poor. Scandinavia, even better again. By smashing trade unions, that solidarity that you had, where people would give up a day's pay and work and go on strike for nurses, that's almost gone. Take a day off, the factory's in trouble, they're striking, we'll help out that factory by striking too. Completely gone. So when people are suffering badly, they can't feed their they can't feed their families, can't heat their houses. When it comes to there's not enough housing for the poor, people just shrug their shoulders, they walk on by, they're not politically active. So hence the stress on building a politically active working class again. Because the rich are active. You can see the consequences of the rich's activity in these high rises that are going up. One of the ones, the home-based one, for example, big Chinese money coming over here. So the working class need to get organised, which is incredibly difficult, of course, but it's something that I campaign for. The point about new homes, data is key. We don't know how many homes in the borough are short-term Airbnbs, so they're taken out of circulation for local people. We don't know how many people have got holiday homes, which again impacts on the housing shortage. We don't know how many houses in the borough are empty homes. So we need the data to come to make decisions. In the past, you would have family homes let approximately £700 a month, so ordinary people could afford a home. If there was a porter, a hospital cleaner, now that's gone because this so-called affordable housing isn't affordable. It's 80% of the market rent, which is still, if you're a cleaner, porter, someone on average wage, you can't have kids in too many London boroughs, so people are moving out. That's impacted upon the Tesco development. There was a school that was planned there, but because of the demographics that change, people moving out, that school's no longer required. So the change for TUSC, and I hope others, is to say we've got to have a budget. We've got to produce a budget by next year for how we can fund decent public services. So if anyone wants to join me afterwards, I'm about turning ideas into reality, putting budgets together, so we don't just talk about stuff, we work out a way how to deliver.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for one more question and one round.
We have a lot of talk about the air quality. There is an organisation called Mapping for Change. All those Mapping for Change are working in Redbridge. You can all participate. You just need to stick a little tube up on a lamppost or a tree or a drain pipe by your house. Mapping for Change are working in Redbridge. They'll collect the monitoring device and they're going to get a much better picture. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that the two major parties don't turn up. They are dirt. I mean, it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and they don't care. And the previous Hustings in Wanstead Library, appalling fellow from the Labour Party going, don't vote for, well, if you don't vote for me, you'll get the Conservative. Tweedledee or Tweedledum. They're an appalling lot.
Thank
Or you
you.
didn't turn up.
Okay, let's have your question.
We kind of touched on police from various different angles. What kind of one thing would you try to change if you were elected? Just one, because there are obviously lots of different areas in respect of policing.
Okay, so we're running short of time because we've got to finish at 10:02. So can I ask the panel to restrict their responses to 2 minutes each?
Yes. So there's one thing I already do, which I actually think there should be more of. I currently, as a community representative, meet with the commissioner within the borough to talk about what the current issues are, how the police are dealing with those issues, and also giving feedback on how things could be improved, and vice versa. They also talk to us about getting information out. Now I think that's somewhat limited in terms of they are community representatives across the board, but there isn't enough of this information going back to residents. So as much as individuals try to do that, actually it would be helpful if there were meetings like this where the commissioner could come and people could actually talk to them. Because I actually think that's where, and hence why, as an independent, I'm saying we need people power, people to be able to talk directly to the people who are making the decision and are affecting the issues within our communities.
But you'd be talking to the Met, wouldn't you? So
across London, but you can also talk to each individual as well. It's not just the Met.
You're the GLA though, aren't you? So
as a GLA member, you would talk to the Met, but it all interlinked, and you would still be able to have the conversation directly, even as a GLA member. Because you're Havering and Redbridge, I would still be expected to talk to the commissioner that's responsible for these two boroughs and speak to them about the current issues and have that. So that's one thing I would definitely, from experience, I would say a lot more of that is necessary in order to make sure that resources are channeled where they're needed.
Thank you. Andy?
Accountability is key. It works in the private sector. It works in the NHS. By that I mean the board meets, the National for King George and Queen's this Thursday. I will be there. I'll probably be the only member of the public there because they deliberately make it difficult. You've got to put 4 days written notice of a question, and it's during the day. On my YouTube channel, there's when the Ilford Police came here, Mark Carney, the top man, took some questions. I put it on my YouTube channel. They didn't broadcast it. There's no indication that they will come back. But like the NHS, they should be meeting, I would say, monthly, each month, a short presentation, 20 minutes, half an hour, on what they're doing about serious violent crimes, rape. One thing that is a crime that most people completely overlook is overhousing, housing overcrowding. It's a criminal offence. I've asked the council about this, and they said, we'll get back to you. There's a YouTube video, and they said, oh, we'll get back to you. Because I was saying, all this housing going up high-rise, is it working on overcrowding? Because my guess is it isn't. Because when people are confident about stuff, they broadcast it. When they're not so confident about it, they don't tell you about it. So as well as violent crime, I'd want a report each month about housing overcrowding because it's really important to people's life chances. If you can't study in a bedroom and you're in a room with the rest of the family, there's children fighting, there's telly on, they want to watch football, do you think you're really going to do it well in A-levels? Do you think that's going to make it easier for you to get into Oxbridge, or is it going to make life a lot more difficult? So if we're going to get the best out of our countries, do the best for our children, we need to monitor the crime of overcrowding.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
When I was a few years ago heavily involved in the campaign to save Wanstead Police Station, when the previous mayor closed that, the previous mayor he proposed closing Wanstead and Woodford Police Stations, the two that we had in the west of the borough. So I was heavily involved in the campaign locally, working with other councillors and also working with local residents groups like and the Wanstead Society and people like that. And we fought very, very hard, raised a massive petition, presented it to City Hall. In the end, we lost that particular fight. However, when Boris closed Wanstead Police Station, he did so only on the basis that he would keep Woodford Police Station. So there would still be a visible presence, physical presence in the west of the borough. Obviously, since then, Sadiq has closed Woodford Police Station as well and downgraded Barkingside. So the one biggest thing that I think I would like to see done to improve policing, and it would improve both the kind of public confidence and reassurance in the police, in the ability for them to do their job, but also increase the deterrence factor. It's about visible presence, and it's about strengthening neighbourhood policing, increasing that visible presence so people are aware that there are police out and about. Part of that is redeploying so that officers spend a greater proportion of their time on the beat. At the moment, I understand only about 5% of officers who are currently on shift are actually out there on the beat. So we can increase that significantly without having a massive knock-on effect on the other work that they're doing. But also physical buildings. We've lost a lot of police stations. So instead, we're not going to be able to reopen all the police stations that have lost. A lot of them have been sold off for development. But what I talked about earlier, setting up these public police access points where police can be based and public can go and see them in busy locations, 24-hour supermarkets, McDonald's, that kind of, and work in partnership with the private sector so we can attract the funding to make that happen. And it's in their interest too, to help reduce things like shoplifting, which is not something we've mentioned, but it's a huge. We have a shoplifting epidemic in London right now, and having a more visible police presence in those locations, I think would help deter that. So yeah, visible presence, that's the answer.
There's no shoplifting in Greggs, by the way.
You can't get to the food. Okay, I'd like Fraser to come back on that first,
Sure.
and then we'll have your question.
Okay, yeah. So, Rob Blackwood for Mayor, the Lib Dem candidate, his number one priority in these elections is to fix the Met. He'll be really pleased with me that I've managed to get that soundbite in. Look, nobody can live happily anywhere if they don't feel safe. And the reality is that so many of us in our communities don't feel safe at the moment, and so many people believe that the police are failing them. Particularly minority communities, particularly the poorest communities, just being routinely let down by the Met. The proportion of rapes and sexual assaults that result in a charge by the police has halved since 2016. Which is pretty shocking, and it just shows the issue that we are dealing with here. So what would we do to start with? Well, there are around 6,000 staff that are currently stuck in offices, and these are in the Met, and these aren't admin staff, these are actual trained police officers that are stuck in offices doing paperwork or God knows what. First point of call, get them out, dust them down, get them out on the beat. Build that relationship with the community and reassure people. We need to strengthen the local teams as well, the local policing teams that deal with things like burglaries and antisocial behaviour. They've been cut to the bone by City Hall and by central government. We need to be restoring that. And ultimately, we need to be just bringing these issues closer to the communities they serve, and we're a long way off that at the moment. So really appreciate the question. That's our number one priority in this election.
Thank you, Fraser. Okay, so I noticed you two had a question, but we've only got time for one more question.
I just want to comment.
The black community feels there's racism within local politics. They feel they're not represented. They feel that when it comes to investment in local community for the black community, it's not there. It's not in housing, it's not in health, it's not in disability, it's not in social businesses, and also the lack of social centres. What will you do if you become part of this great arena to represent the black community and have changes brought about?
So once again, if we stick to 2 minutes, we'll be able to get a response from each member of the panel. Who would like to go first? Andy?
Well, Ash, wealthy people are black, poor people are black, and I take your point on board because of looking at air pollution. Minorities suffer because minorities are in the poorest housing, which is often right by busy roads. I have no quick answer to your question. It's a huge issue. but you and I have campaigned on various things. My view is if you lift people out of poverty, with minorities being overly represented amongst the poorest, you automatically tackle some racism. On broader points, hate crimes should be reported each month to the borough, along with the point I mentioned earlier about the peace meeting in the borough each month. So if there's racist crimes, you want to know why they're racist, what boroughs are doing best to stop racist crimes. So accountability on that point is key. Just campaigning on the child death stats. The poorest 8-year-olds, according to an FT analysis, die at a rate 10 times faster, for want of a better word, a rate 10 times faster than the most affluent children. And my guess is that minorities are overly represented in the death stats, which perhaps at the level Democrats and there's a cross-party consensus on, will look into the causes of the increase in child deaths.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, I don't have a simple and straightforward answer to that. I'm not going to pretend that I do. But what I would want to do, if I was elected to this, I'd want to work with members of all parts of the community and discuss the issues that you have and be as fair as possible as a representative for everybody. I don't like seeing things in terms of kind of segregating by race, by gender, sexual identity, whatever. It's not a way that I feel comfortable in viewing things. I want our institutions of government to represent the whole community. A big part of how we can all do better is getting the economy moving again. So getting people back to work, giving people a sense of pride in their achievements and their ability to contribute, but getting more people involved in more things and getting more people from different backgrounds and so on involved in politics is a good thing. Absolutely. But yeah, I don't have a simple answer for you, but I'd love to have another discussion at another time if we do have the opportunity to do so.
Let me go next. I was pausing and just considering my answer to you because I've grown up with racism. I was called a packie and chased down the road. I remember the days of the National Front when it was just common practice to just get a kicking just because of the colour of your skin. And going from that into the civil service, and I actually left the civil service as a senior civil servant. So, direct answer to you, I actually took steps to tackle racism through institutions as well, looking at the data and the statistics and saying, why is it that black and ethnic minorities are not represented in civil service? Why is it that they're only in the junior grades? Why is it in the duties that require cleaning or whatever it might be? Why don't they get the opportunities to actually progress? And the answer to that is working with Cabinet Office, top of government, with number 10, and across governments to say what we need to do is look at why there are barriers there, where the way we advertise, the way we actually appeal for these things to people, we subliminally sometimes block people out because we're considering a certain type of person needs that job. And it's not consciously always done, it can be subconsciously. So that subconscious bias being addressed. And actually, the outcome was, when I left the civil service, it was actually much more, shall we say, representative of all the communities than it was when I started. So that's my answer. And if, as a GLA member, just by electing me, I think you'll have changed something straight away. Not only independent, but the fact that you've got somebody from a black and ethnic minority background who's actually representative of the people. The other thing I want to pick up on is, I think in mainstream politics, we've seen more and more of this. Now, I'm going to touch on Islamophobia in terms of whatever, all of us may have issues with Sadiq Khan, hasn't done this, hasn't delivered that. But the one thing I don't agree with is criticising him because of his faith. Yeah, that's something, and what you're talking about, that's just another form of hatred and another form of racism. And unfortunately, what saddened me and disappointed me was somebody from the Conservative Party, who's a key minister, represented the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson, makes those statements, public statements, and unfortunately then goes and joins another party who welcome him, and there's still been no apology. So I have to say it as it is. That's just not acceptable. That's just moving things along without addressing the issues. And I would be addressing that, as I am doing now. I would be publicly speaking out on these issues.
Thank you, Leslie. I think Fraser?
Something that something that I'm really proud of, as I touched on at the beginning, is how diverse the city is, and I think it's great that for the most part, so many different communities, ethnicities, and faiths can live together. Redbridge, especially, is a great example of that. I'm quite concerned, firstly, by some of the fact that the temperature has been risen by certain politicians. I don't think a lot of that stuff is very helpful. So the Lib Dems would be a pretty clean break on that front. And in fact, Rob Blackie has done some research into particularly the black community, and he gave an interview about it a couple of weeks ago. And we found that that community are more likely to be a victim of some of these petty crimes that the Met just aren't investigating. And then it's worth mentioning, of course, the institutionally racist policy of stop and search, which Rob Blackie as mayor would review, because we know we've got tons of data on this, that this disproportionately hits the black community, and does really very little to stop knife crime, actually. So we would review that. We'd like to see more body cams rolled out so that we can keep an eye on what the police are doing. Most of the police are good people doing a good job, but of course you're going to get exceptions. We'd like to replace that policy with a more holistic approach to knife crime, treating it as a public health issue. And then I think it's worth recognising that, as we've done research, these issues with housing, more likely to be victim of crime. If you're from a minority community, then you're going to be disproportionately affected by that. So it is important for everybody that we have a mayor and we have a team in City Hall that takes these issues seriously, and I will do that.
Can I just answer that too much? I apologise. The answer was there's racism within political parties. How are you going to deal with that? I think that was one of the questions you have answered.
I mean, if this is related to what I think it's related to, it's probably best if I stay out of that, I would have thought.
Well, do you mind if I ask the chairs?
Go ahead.
Are you talking about the Diane Abbott incident?
Well, I was talking about Diana Abbott. I don't know what this gentleman is talking about. Diana Abbott was blatantly said, called a racist, was blatantly said hate crime was sent out. So I don't know what you're talking about. Do you care to expand on that, what you're talking about? I'm a little bit confused.
Oh, is that what you meant? Okay. Wait, sorry, I've lost the train of thought.
I think it just carries on from what I said, that's another example, same party, where this has become mainstream and nothing is done. In fact, more money is taken from the person saying those things and somehow trying to be defending of that rather than just coming out with it plainly and saying this is not acceptable. That's what needs to be said. It's not acceptable. It has no place in any party or any institute. We need to tackle it whenever we see it, whenever we hear about it. We don't sit next to somebody who says it and then pretend we didn't hear it. That's what needs to happen.
Well, Chair?
Go ahead, Andy.
The Labour Party's not here, but I have every sympathy with the notion that there's a hierarchy of racism within the Labour Party. So yes, people have heard, but it's not particularly fair. The Labour Party's not here, but people want me to expand upon that.
Do you want to comment, Alex?
Chair.
Yes, you had one more comment to make.
Important point to raise. I admire all of you for standing as a GLA candidate. However, please let's not lose sight of all of you and disappear into the ether. Now, I know of Andy Walker. He's worked tirelessly in the community. Unfortunately, I've never met the three of you, and this is the first opportunity I've had to meet with you. However, a very, very important point I wish to make, and I would want one of you to definitely make that commitment. Whoever gets elected, set up a coalition of all the GLA candidates, because you'll come to the forefront pre-election. when post-election, if you're not voted in, you disappear into the ether. Let's now hold the elected person accountable. Set up a coalition. One of you takes the responsibility to please set up a coalition of all of you, that we, the residents, know, okay, we've got an issue prevailing here that affects London. How do you hold the elected member to account? Which one of you will take on that responsibility and definitely make that commitment to set up that coalition and be part of it too? Thank you.
Just a quick response in terms of, I know you haven't perhaps heard of me, but there's certainly no change in what I already do within the community. Part of the reason you probably haven't heard of me is that it's never been about publicising who I am, but it has been about making sure I achieve things for the community. So outside this, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and go through all the things perhaps you're not aware of, but in the background, I've been there working with all parts of the community trying to get change and effective change at that. So I will continue to do that, and I've always said this has just been an opportunity to raise that voice and elevate a little further in terms of having more of an impact, but just because 2nd of May is going to come and go isn't going to change what I already do. I'm going to continue with the volunteering, I'm going to continue working across resident associations, continue to work with the police, continue to work, Redbridge and Havering, and help wherever I can.
Okay, forgive me for responding directly to you.
Please.
So would you be the person who will coordinate and set up that coalition so that we, the residents, know that there is a group of people who will hold that elected member to account?
I'm more than happy to do that, no problem.
Okay.
And if I might just say, I think that is the job of the community. Okay, we vote in who are going to be our GLA representatives, but we have to hold them to account.
Yes, but
So,
Chair, with respect, it is a thankless task for all the people sitting on the platform, okay? People are busy. If we have a converted group of people who are standing for the GLA candidate, okay, let's get them to stand as
I understand
coalition.
your point. I
And
understand
don't
your
lose
point because
sight
they've
of
already
it, because-
put themselves forward.
Yes, exactly. They're the converted or the committed as well. So let's not lose sight of each and every one of them and set up this, and someone chairs and coordinates it and holds that elected member to account. What have you done about this issue? What have you done about, as far as Havering and Redbridge?
It's a great idea, and I think you're volunteering yourself as the chair.
No, I'm useless.
Okay.
I see if I just
Don't
offer
put
to
yourself
do that.
down. We do have to finish. I'm sorry, I have to bring it to an end. Yeah.
I think that is a very interesting idea. It's not something I've ever heard being suggested as a kind of a post-election thing that, after the outcome of an election. But I think it's a really, really good idea. I mean, this evening, we've had some fantastic questions, had a lot of different perspectives, but what I think we've shown, that the four of us that are here, we all care deeply about Redbridge, about the borough we live in, about the borough we work in, and I think it's a fantastic idea to keep this kind of team spirit. We all have different attitudes and different background politics.
So we all go across the road if we've been kicked out of here, and then discuss how we're going to
I mean, the political answer is I will be more than happy for them to hold me to account when I win. That's the answer.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
We've had this discussion on a very kind of open and polite and friendly and civil way of doing it, and that's how politics should be. We have different perspectives, but ultimately what binds us together as Redbridge residents is more than what sets us apart as political activists, and that's how it should be.
Well said. Thank you very much, Alex. You've left me very little to sum up with. I should just say, don't forget to vote on Thursday, and I wish you all a safe journey
Take
home.
identity with you as well.
Take your ID with you.
Photo ID at that.
We need some helpers to remove the furniture for this room before we go. So if you'd like to take your chair and one other chair and stack them up against the wall, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good to meet you as well. I think we're both